Hey Googlers, it's Kasim and John,
How's it going?
and we're here with our weekly video where we, the dynamic duo, get together and teach you things about the Googles. And today we're talking about attribution, per John's request. And John, why don't you give us a little more context
This
outside of me just knowing the word attribution?
those multiple syllable ones get tough. Attribution. So yeah, we talk about this a lot. There's a hidden, how would I describe this? There's a hidden fail point that I think people don't think about. And it's always an afterthought. Like you're like, okay, I choose my attribution model that I think is going to work, and then I set up my goals, and then I start my campaign, and then retroactively when you look back, you're handicapping yourself. And I don't think a lot of people understand just how limiting that can be, especially when you scale. Your attribution model is how Google is going to attribute a conversion to what campaign, when, and how much. And if you simply just select an attribution model that seems like works good, and you don't set up the goals inside of your campaign, your bidding strategy, like target CPA, target ROAS, maximize conversion with the target ROAS, whatever it may be, you end up robbing the campaign of its efficiency that it needs to scale or to even perform normally. Plus, on the other side of that, you also could potentially lose out on conversions that you didn't know that you had because you're attributing it wrong. So the first part that we talked about, which is the attribution model, how it hurts your campaign. I'll give you a really good example. A lot of people like to use either linear, time decay, data driven, just because those, first click and last click, they might be too risky. Now, if you use linear as an example, you split the conversions evenly. And not only are you splitting conversions, you're splitting the conversion value as well. So a $100 sale is actually a $50 sale to that campaign. Now, if you set a campaign, let's say target return on net spend.
Wait, can you jack up? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm using linear, and there's 2 clicks, is what you're saying. $100 sale is a $50 sale to that campaign because the time between those clicks when whatever it is I'm viewing, so it's really a time window issue.
Great explanation, Kasim. Yes, no.
I just didn't want to glaze over the 100 becoming 50 without maybe explaining it a little bit better.
Now that we're caught up.
I don't want to publish this one.
So what it means is that if you click on campaign A and then you click on campaign B and buy, you spend $100. That person spends $100 with you. It takes $50 and gives it to campaign A and $50 and gives it to campaign B, because it says each click, drove that conversion, or had at least a influence in that conversion, and it's just taking the campaign or the conversion, just separating it and just dividing it by 2 and then giving it to those campaigns. When we watch this back, you're gonna laugh. But you're right. It's a time issue, and it's a multiple clicks. And then the more that you have interactions with those campaigns, the more diluted it gets. If you have 4 or 5 clicks between 4 or 5 different campaigns, you give very, very small amounts to each one of those campaigns. Now, take smart shopping, for example. Smart shopping is heavy remarketing, and it's a lot of outbound. So it's a lot of times the first click or the last click. It happens very, very frequently. It's not just always the first click or always the last click or always the middle. It's every click, especially if you have a time lag of 15 days. So what ends up happening is if you tell that campaign, hey, I need a 400% return on ad spend. So if I spend $1, you make me 4. And let's say it had the last click on that campaign was a remarketing click from smart shopping, and you spent $1 on that click and you made $4. You've hit your goal. The problem is when you take linear, you're like, well, you only get half of that conversion. So you spent $1 and made 2, and your 400% ROAS goal was not met. You made 200% ROAS. So you end up sabotaging that campaign because you're like, hey, why don't you make a 400% return on ad spend? It might be making a 400% return on ad spend. You're just stealing half the attribution away, giving it to your brand campaign. And now you're wondering why your campaign started to atrophy, starting to die in terms of impressions and clicks. This happens every time. I have not yet seen a campaign that knows this and acts like that, where you say, yeah, but since I'm using linear, I've cut my target return on ad spend goal in half, and I've given it to that campaign. I've never seen that happen. So that's why I think that it's something that we should discuss, because people don't quite understand how big of an issue this could be when you have those multiple campaign touch points. And I have a little visual that I pull up.
I'm excited for the visual.
Ta-da! Everything here on the left-hand side is going to be blurred. I'll reference them when we need to. Is just, this is a client's name inside the campaign, so that's where this is just going to be blurred off. But when you're looking at a model comparison tool inside of your Google Ads, and how you find there is go tools, click on attribution, and then over on the left-hand side, click model comparison. What you're doing is you're comparing the attribution model. So we do have a video on this, how to use this, but we haven't talked about actual statistical data and why it's important. Make sure you opt into the beta. This is where you get the cross-model network, and the cross-model network is cool because it actually imports data from your YouTube and display campaigns, not just the search. And it also imports the smart shopping. If you turn off the cross-network model, you'll see I have smart shopping, which is the second one. You won't be able to see that here, but I don't have my video campaign. And when I turn on my cross-network model, I have a few more campaigns. So make sure you opt into the beta, and then use the cross-model network. And here's what's interesting. We recommend first click a lot. That's something that we usually recommend, just because it allows you to identify what is initially starting that sale, regardless of how long it takes, so that you can make sure that when you want to scale your campaign, you know exactly where to put the dollar. It's put where the people start the process and then they're buying the most. Fairly simple. Now, if you look at first click versus data driven, or let's say like first click to last click as an example, and this might take a second to update. Google's being super slow today. Well, let's just keep it on.
Now it changes.
Yeah, now it changed, of course. Anyway, first click and data driven. First click says, hey, the conversions that came in this top campaign here, which is our smart shopping campaign, from first click on smart shopping is 3,378 sales since January 1, since this year. Data driven is 3,580.84. There's a 6% increase. Now, a 6% increase doesn't sound like much, but what you're taking is 3,580 minus 3,378. You're giving it 202 additional sales. The average cart value on this client's account is $83. So you're giving it $16,000 more by going to data driven. Or if you're on, first click versus last click, you could be taking $16,000 out of it. Now, when you have higher dollar amounts, it's not very damning, I guess I would say. But when you look at more extreme cases, this one here is a video retargeting campaign. From first click on that campaign, after that campaign took over and started retargeting people, you have 6 conversions for $1,000. Turning on like data driven as an example, you have 20.5. This increased by 242%. This campaign just went from not that great to amazing, because our video retargeting, our average cart value, is, let's say $90. Let's just use some round numbers. It was costing me $174 to make $90. Now it's costing me $50. So I'm not ROAS positive. We're not spending a whole bunch on this amount, but I've been limiting the spend to see, is this going to be viable? And if I'm using, let's say, target CPA, what would be your goal here if you're using target CPA? If it's getting 174, you're going to give it like $200 CPA. Well, you actually are getting $51. You're just attributing it wrong. So when you think about how does this interact with your goal, if you choose the wrong attribution model, you have to purposely kind of set the wrong goals, knowing that you're misattributing it. And what I mean, you have to set the right goals knowing you're misattributing it. If you know you're stealing conversions away from that campaign and giving it to another campaign, then set your goals knowing that you're stealing conversions from that campaign and giving it to a different campaign.
No, that makes a lot of sense. If you've got an attribution model that helps you in the short term but doesn't let you see everything that you need to see, then your goals need to be just more flexible so you don't inhibit that campaign, because otherwise you're going to hamstring it.
Right. And especially if you have, this is a search campaign here, we spent $24,000 on. 780 sales from the first click, 669 data driven. So if I went to data driven, I actually lost 15 of my sales. Now let's put some real dollar amounts to that. So 780 minus 669. So I lost 111 sales times $83 or $84 per car value. That's $10,000 worth of sales away from a campaign that I spent $24,000 on. That's a big chunk. So essentially spending $24,000 and making X or making X minus, like possibly 10 grand. Do you think the campaign's performing well? Well, if you're on data driven, it looks like that campaign's performing okay. But if you're on first click, now that campaign's performing well. But then flip that around. Now, if you're on data driven, the smart shopping campaign's performing much better. So you see that this adds like, I don't know, 20 grand. This takes away 10 grand. So which attribution model is right? Well, all of them, any of them, really. Any attribution model could be perfect as long as you understand how the sale to that campaign is going to be given to it and you're adjusting your goals correctly, whether it be ROAS or whether you're looking at target CPA, because $174 down to 50, or even a $30 up to 35. My target CPA on first click can be 30. My target CPA at data driven has to be 35. So you can't set the same goal and give it any attribution model. It has to be specific to what that campaign is going to earn as a conversion, and then setting an appropriate goal, not just the goal you want, but an appropriate goal. By setting a $30 CPA bid on a data-driven model, my campaign is going to start to die. By setting a $31 CPA bid model on a first click, my campaign is going to start to spend more. So that's what's interesting is I see very, very frequently, you're setting a high goal, and then you take away the the conversion value, or you take away the conversions. Another big thing that I don't think people understand too is whether you're using time decay, linear, data-driven, any conversion that takes place that gets split, the simple mathematic equation that takes place to give you a result inside of Google Ads is not accounting for decimal errors, or decimal attribution. What I mean by that is if it costs me $10 to make a sale and I give it 0.5 of a conversion, my cost per conversion is $20. It takes 0.5, multiplies it by 2 to get you a full conversion, 1, and then whatever you cost to get that and multiply that by 2, that's your cost per conversion.
That makes sense.
So if every sale that takes place in your campaign is always after 2 clicks, or the majority of it is always after 2 clicks, your CPA is artificially higher when you look at your cost per conversion column. So if you're talking, again, it's just the same thing with ROAS. If my cost per conversion is X and I take away half of that conversion, knowing that my CPA is artificially going to double, you have to set that CPA higher than what you want for it to not start to atrophy. It's a really interesting phenomenon. I have not seen anybody do this yet, so I want to make
That's because nobody knows what you know about Google Ads. So here's my challenge to you. Okay, I'm going to throw something back at you, and then we'll wrestle with it.
Yeah.
You've articulated the problem perfectly.
Yeah.
And I know you know how to solve it because you're Rain Man. Like, come down to earth for us just a little bit. Like, what are and I realize that there are no rules, basically, is what we're saying, but give me a little bit of that, like that I see that mind map that you build anytime you're going through a campaign and you're saying, well, if this, then that, because here, so like help walk me through some of the, let's say, standard implementation that people would experience, what attribution model to choose when this happens, with some of the caveats. Like, let's give some people some action items moving forward. Is that fair?
Yeah. I would say the place to start is, where are you spending the most amount of money? Where are you spending the most amount of money in your campaigns? Focus on that one first. Focus on that campaign. If you're spending, the 50, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 rule, if you're like having 50% of your ads and spend going to one campaign and the other 5 are getting 10%, focus on that one first, and then look at the model comparison tool and say, how do I give the most amount of conversions to that campaign? And then play around with it. I mean, that's the thing too, is, again, every attribution model will work perfectly. It's just how you interpret that data and how you set proper goals to it. So you want to use linear, great, use linear. You want to use data-driven, first click, last click, doesn't matter. Whatever attribution model allows more conversions and conversion value to be given to your main campaign, the better, because that is going to give it the most amount of data to learn. And it's going to be able to learn faster and learn more frequent. And it gives you faster results when you start to possibly, let's say, change a bidding strategy or set different CPCs or maybe update an ad. The more you can give that campaign, the more it learns, and it learns faster, and the more data that it has overall, just like in its big bank of conversion data, the better it'll perform long term. So prioritize your top performing campaigns, give the most amount of attribution to those. And then if you are going to split conversions, which means if you're only going to give half of the conversion value to that main campaign, either not double, but increase your CPA goal to account for that artificial inflation, or decrease your target ROAS goal, knowing that you're accounting for that artificial deflation. I guess you're not going to attribute as much return on ad spend to that account or to that campaign. Don't set your goal that high. You can deduce from the campaign using model comparison tool what that needs to be. If you're like, well, if I have it on first click and last click, it looks like it steals 20% of a conversion. So if I do switch to that, I need to set my target CPA goal 20% higher, or my return on ad spend goal 20% lower. So that's what I would say is focus on your main campaign first. Figure out which attribution model in the model comparison tool gives most conversions to that campaign, and then do some day-by-day calculations. So look at the 4th, and then the 5th, and the 6th, and the 7th, and the 8th. Just look at one day and say, well, if I made 0.5 in a sale, what was my CPA? Oh, that does look higher. So you can kind of take it day by day and say, when it makes a sale, and I know how much the sale amount is, what is it giving in terms of return on ad spend or CPA? And when you take it day by day, you can kind of get a better understanding as to how much artificial inflation or deflation is there.
So that makes a lot of sense, but and stop me if I'm being naive. If the point is to give the most amount of juice, let's say, to the primary campaign, your primary campaign 99 times out of 100 is your acquisition campaign. So doesn't that, and it goes back to why we recommend first click so often, but doesn't that basically make first click like the always setting unless there's a specific reason not to use it?
No, you're right, and that's the thing, is it kind of goes back to where I was saying before, like in this main campaign that I was sharing with you, first click loses 202 sales. Data driven gives 202 sales more, because the smart shopping campaign is heavy remarketing. So that campaign first click, yeah, that will work. It will give 200 conversions less, but it took 7 months to earn 200 less, so it's fine. But just know that what other campaigns are involved in that are going to be stealing away that attribution.
Yeah. Well, not everybody has access to data driven, right? What's the threshold before you can get data driven?
Data driven is 3,000 ad clicks and some amount of money. I forget exactly what it is. I can tell you here.
In what time period?
All time. Well, no, sorry.
Lifetime clicks.
All time for your conversion action.
Got it.
So it depends on what your conversion is. Okay, I had a note about this. Let's see. Yeah, I forget what it was. It just says some conversion actions are currently eligible for data driven, some aren't.
And I don't know how data driven works. My understanding based off of the light reading I've done is that it's basically Google saying we'll decide. So it's more or less automated bidding, but inside of attribution.
Oh, there is 300 conversions and 3,000 ad interactions. I knew it was 3,000 clicks, but I didn't know how many conversions. 300 conversions. Yeah, data driven. I like it because data driven gives weight to items that don't even need a click. So your video retargeting, as an example, that video retargeting campaign I just spoke about earlier went from 6 to 21 because it did play a big role in getting that person to convert. Like, man, every single time this person sees a second ad, within 6 minutes, they buy. So
the data driven will play off of impressions, not just clicks.
Yeah.
Can you see that in the ad dashboard? Like, will you see a campaign that has 0 clicks, 1 impression, and then some level of attribution?
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It was crazy. Yeah, and actually, I'll share with you a real example of this. We're gonna have to do some heavy editing. So sorry, Jack. You're gonna have to blur out a lot of stuff. But let me get to the right campaign, and I'll show you
Just so
this.
y'all know, while John's doing that, our editor's name is Jacqueline, and she's amazing.
Yeah,
And she put ups with so much. So shout out to Jack.
that's why I'm apologizing again.
Yeah, grateful to you.
Awesome. So again, I'm gonna take some blurring to do, but Google in its infinite wisdom, when you go into, I'll just share this with you. When you go into tools and you go into conversions and then you go over to settings, they default to this for whatever reason, and then just don't tell you. Include view through conversions from display and video ads in your all conversion columns. So you want to see view through, you can't look at just the conversions. You have to look at the all conversion tab to see the view through. It's super annoying. And here, and they hide it. And people are like, yeah, Google is horrible at view through conversions. Well, not necessarily. If you look at this here, if you look at view through conversions, it's not there. It's not in the view through conversion tab. It's now in the all conversion tab. So here's what I mean by that. If I look at just the
Wait,
video
what's
campaign,
in the view through conversion column if you were to enable that?
I'll show you. So there, view through conversion shows 1. All conversion shows 2. It doesn't, and this is for the shopping app purchase. Now in this last 7 days, this is where the 2 came from. Now clicks show 1. It's very, 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 very strange. This is not necessarily right. The all conversion value here is where you find the actual value, is in the all conversion value. It doesn't show anything in view through conversions. There's no view through conversion value. It's in all. Now what's funny though is, let me see if I have just regular conversion value. Hold on. See the difference? Conversion value is 104. All conversion value is 209 for a purchase.
So all I'm seeing is all conversion shows the standard conversions that we had plus the view through conversions equals all conversions.
Yeah, but you can't, but if you said, hey, I had a view through conversion, what they spend?
I see what you're saying. So we won't be able to get any value unless we're looking at all conversion value. There's no view through conversion values.
Yep, and if you look at, so if I said conversions, my apologies, it was conversion values, what I meant to say. You'll see here, there's 5 plus 9 equals 14. And then the conversion value still is only going to show you based off the click. This
so you
is where
could build a custom column and just subtract all conversion value from conversion value, and that'll give you view through conversion value.
Right, but only in a video or display. You can actually apply all conversion value to your search campaigns, and they'll be just 0. So it's really, you have to just make sure that you're looking only at display or video campaigns. So when you look at the all conversion value, which normally people don't do, because obviously you're like, well, that's $5,000 there. That's wrong. But then you break it out by segmenting by conversion actions and say, oh no, I'm looking at just 1. Don't just hit all conversion value and say, wow, it's actually $5,000 in view throughs. Nope. This is going to default count all of your conversion value that you're trying not to count. So it's weird. You have to enable everything you don't want and then segment to pick what you do want. Yay, Google. But again, if you're setting a return on ad spend goal, Google ignores view through. It ignores all conversion value and only looks at the conversion column, which doesn't include view through conversions.
Yeah.
So how do you set a return on ad spend goal to 1,056 in view through conversions that are not counted? A, you can use data driven, that helps you get there, and B, knowing how you're attributing the sales to your campaigns or lead costs to your campaigns, choose the right goal. If I set a target CPA on this one to being too low, my video campaign that I spent X amount to make, X amount is just going to die when it used to be good. Just so amazing. The attribution models, the bidding strategies, goals, and how Google delivers information to you, but only counts the information it wants to count, doesn't make sense.
Just makes me mad.
Makes me happy.
Yeah. Well, it's good for us.
Security.
I hate to say it. Yeah, it's good for an agency. It keeps us in business, but it frustrates me on behalf of, honestly, it's the small mom and pop advertisers that are trying to make things work. And you almost feel like a charlatan when you're on the other end of the phone and they're asking you like, all right, well, what, what attribution, what bid strategy, whatever. And then it's just constant like, well, it depends. Well, if you know what I mean? And you can't give people straight answers anymore because there's so many.
Well, it's funny because there's someone asked me like that, and that's why I want to make this video. I get comments on YouTube. It's like, which bidding strategy should I use? I'm like, oh man,
yeah,
like there's not enough room. Yeah, there's not enough room in the comment section for me to explain this all. It took half hour to get through this.
Well, a lot of that was me helping to guide the discussion. Yeah, a lot of it, you know what it is though, dude? It's like somebody getting into like the cockpit of a fighter jet, and they're just like, all right, which ones go? You know what I mean? It's like,
well, how fast do you need to go? Yeah, I know that's the thing too. Is like sometimes we'll just have like I changed from this bidding strategy. I went from first click to linear, and all my campaigns died. It's like, well, did you update any goals? And then you get the kind of the blank stare, like what? And that's why this is just so
goals.
Yeah,
yeah. Dude, I remember when we switched to first click, I thought you were insane. I remember when, because we were like, all about time decay, all the, and so too was everyone else. Like that was the gold standard in the space of education. And then you're like, I'm going to try first click for smart shopping. And I'm like, well, there goes that campaign. And next thing we know, you know what I mean? Like now that's the gold standard. I think that's pretty cool.
Search with display select in smart shopping will bring just a massive amount of people that within 90 days, someone will buy. And if it can see that, it'll do that again.
So what we were working with another agency at that time, you know who I'm talking about, and you mentioned to them because you used to chop them up a little bit, and I'll say, how do I say this not passive aggressively? Advise them on proper approaches.
Yeah.
And I correct me if I'm wrong here, but when you kicked that over, they were just kind of like, man, I don't know. Like there's just, there's no way.
We're not responsible for the result of this change.
That's what it was. Yeah. We're not responsible for what happens when you do this. And it's like, all right, well, you're not responsible for the 15,000% ROAS that we just got our customer.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. That's I think that's everything for today.
This was a good video.
This was good.
It wasn't my best moment. I feel like I'm gonna have
you know what's funny is we're gonna watch this back. You're gonna say it perfectly. I probably just glazed over and I just didn't understand. That's most likely what happened.
I was doing my best. I try to assume the role of the listener when I'm talking to you because I want to ask you the questions that I feel like other people would ask.
No, that's perfect because usually I'm just by myself and I'm like that scene from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where I have the board and like the 1,000 lines drawn and I'm like, he exists.
Pepe Silva.
Pepe Silva. Yeah, that's me by myself and no one ever understands what I'm doing. So
it helps. So much respect from all of our, like now that people know that we watch, not just watch, but also can quote.
Jack, edit this out. Awesome.
If you're watching this, like, comment, subscribe, do all those things. But John and I are going to the Traffic and Conversion Summit in, when is it, September?
Yeah, September. Yeah, I forget the dates. I have to look at the date.
Yeah, so September something, you'll find it. Just Google TNC. I'll include a description in the video. And John has a breakout session specifically geared towards e-commerce and smart shopping. So make sure it's my favorite event all year. We go to a bunch of them. I'm going to New York this weekend for something. What is it? Affiliate Summit East. John's talking at Affiliate Summit West, and those are great events, and I love them. But I got to tell y'all, best event I've ever been to, and I've been to all the marketing events. It's TNC. So go to Traffic and Conversion Summit. It's in San Diego. It's a great excuse to get out and hang out by the beach and come see us and watch John speak and say hi. We'll let you buy us drinks.
Perfect.
Appreciate it, dude.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right, buddy. Bye, guys.